Teresa, welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me here today. Today I'm going to be covering some of the top tips that I seem to cover time and time again, scattered throughout all the gel printing videos that I do. I still tend to find the same questions crop up in the comments and things like that, and I see similar questions in groups on social media. So I thought it might be a good idea to actually have all these ideas in one video for quick and easy reference for those of you that are either new to gel printing or maybe just have a couple of queries and that you're not sure whether you should or shouldn't be doing something. I mean, I find with gel printing pretty much anything goes. There are way more do's than don'ts, but this video is sort of going to be my top 5 do's and don'ts for the sort of whole genre of monoprinting, gel printing. So on the table in front of me, I've got a selection of gel plates and brayers. This is what I've got in my collection. This is what I use regularly. Lots of different equipment. Now, I either use these, which are like a red rubber brayer, or this speedball brayer, which is a slightly softer foam brayer. Doesn't really matter which one you use. I tend to choose an appropriate size brayer. If I'm working on a small plate, I use this smaller sort of 2-inch size one, but other than that, I generally use the 4-inch size brayer. All the gel plates I use come from one of 2 companies. They're either a Jelly Arts or a gel press brand. I found no significant difference between the two, other than the fact that the gel press is actually cheaper to purchase here in the UK. Don't know if it's cheaper in the US or elsewhere, but gel press definitely is cheaper than Jelly Arts here in the UK, but they both work equally well. I have different shapes and sizes, from a 4-inch circle, 5x7-inch rectangle, an 8-inch circle, the little 3x5 rectangle, a 6x6-inch square, this set here that has a small hexagon, oval and rectangle in, and this is my big large 8x10-inch rectangle. It doesn't really matter what shape or size plate you've got. You can use any technique on any of the plates. I would suggest going for a mid-range size if you're thinking of starting and haven't got a plate yet. The ones I use most often, 5x7-inch, 6x6-inch. Nice size, not too big, not too small, can do quite a lot with it. But regardless of what shape or size you've got, what brand you've got, you should be able to do pretty much anything on your gel plate. So I'm going to move these basic things out of the way, and I shall be back with my top 5 do's and don'ts. Number 1, do use lots of different media on your plate. Do experiment, do try. The first thing that people generally reach for is acrylic paint. That is the most suitable medium for using on a gel printing plate. And it comes in lots of different forms. You've maybe got tube acrylic paints like these. They're brilliant. You might have heavy body acrylic paint like these ones here. They work really well as well because they've got a lot of viscosity and they stick to the plate. But you can also use the fluid acrylics. Even though they're thinner, they still give really good effects. They're really nice for layering because they sometimes have a little bit more transparency. So don't rule out fluid acrylics. If all you've got is general craft acrylics, such as these sort of things, these are absolutely perfect. They're cheaper, they're more readily available. They come in lots of different colours. You can also get sort of chalk effects, neon effects, metallic effects, all perfect, all brilliant for using on your gel plate. However, don't be limited to just using acrylic paints. You can use various ink pads. I've used things like the Distress ink and the Distress oxide ink, and even though they're a water-based ink and they sit differently on the plate, but that lends itself to creating different textured effects. You can use ink pads such as the VersaFine Clair ink pads, which are a pigment ink. Again, will give you a slightly different effect to these water-based ones. You can use alcohol inks. Alcohol inks work brilliantly. Really vivid colours, there are metallic mixative colours, and just get totally different effects because of the fact that they're a liquid ink rather than a paint. Absolutely brilliant, don't rule those out. You can use ink sprays. You could use either things like the dilution sprays, this is just a dye ink, or these type that have a shimmery mica in them. Absolutely brilliant for creating sort of watercolour abstract backgrounds. In the same way, you could use water-soluble crayons, such as these type. There are others available as well. But things like the Neocolors and the Scribble Sticks, when activated with water, again, work really well to create soft effects on your gel plate. Things like acrylic markers, such as these. Again, you can draw onto the plate and then lift with acrylic paint. You can add details in between layers. You can add details to finished prints with these Posca pens and other acrylic paint markers. Really, really good for quite stylized, sort of pop arty type prints. Again, adds just another whole layer to your printing. Don't, however, worry about staining on your plate. Certain products come off the plate very easily and leave your plate nice and clean. Others will leave some residual staining. So you might find that after you've been using different items on your plate, that you'll see instead of it being crystal clear, it might start to take on this sort of yellowish greenish hue. And I've got this in sort of varying degrees on different plates. This one I think is still fairly clear, got a bit of an orangey red staining around the edge. Ones that I've been using for a long, long time start to take on different colours. But do not worry about it. A lot of people get very concerned when gel plates, rubber stamps, clear stamps start to get stained. It does not affect the performance of your plate at all. A lot of staining can be removed using baby oil, mineral oil, but anything that stays within the plate, it's just cosmetic. It's not going to transfer, it's not going to affect the quality of your prints, so don't worry about it. Number 2, do try lots of different paper and cardstock to print on. Now, I tend to grab all sorts of things. I get asked a lot, what should I use to print on? And the answer is it really doesn't matter. I found things that are smoother tend to give you a better finish. Obviously, if there's a texture on your card or paper where the surface sort of goes up and down, it doesn't make an even contact with the plate, and so that texture will be reflected in your print. But I quite often grab pages from sketchbooks and things like that. So things like this, which is just a normal white sketch pad. This one here that has different coloured papers in, gives different effects, obviously, depending on different coloured backgrounds. I've got larger ones here. Again, it's just a smooth white drawing pad. This one I quite often favour, the mixed media pad, simply because it is designed to take wet and dry media. I tend to get a large sheet like this, cut it down into 4 or 6 pieces and work on it that way. If you don't have anything like that, just your good old basic printer paper, copier paper, absolutely perfect. The fact that it is thinner means it might have a tendency to ripple or curl slightly, but it's still perfectly good. I use it for clean-up prints and things like that. And for collage, a lighter weight paper is very, very useful. So don't rule out just basic printer copier paper if that's all you've got. However, start to think outside the box. You can print on brown paper bags like this. Again, gives a lovely effect with having this toned background. Maybe you've got ledger paper or graph paper. Another scrap of printer paper there. What about music score? This is just some craft cardstock that I've got. Old book pages, anything that's got a bit of a pattern on it already. Again, that's going to show through your print as an extra layer, as more detail in the background, and you can create some really wonderful effects. So do take a good look around at what you've got and experiment with different types of paper and cardstock. In this category though, I have one don't, and my don't is do not use photo paper. Glossy photo paper, things that you would normally print your photographs on, don't use that. The glossy surface, for whatever reason, has a nasty habit of sticking to your gel plate, and you'll come to try and peel it off and it will tear and rip and leave big areas stuck onto your plate, which you'll then have to try and soak or scrape off without damaging your plate. And it's an absolute nightmare, it takes all the joy out of printing. So my big don't in this paper and card category is do not use photo printing paper. Number 3, look for items around your house and garden that have interesting textures that you can use to create prints on your gel plate. From the absolute basics that everyone's tried, like bubble wrap, bits of string and twine wrapped around a kitchen roll tube that you can roll across the surface of the plate, cut up some drinking straws, use wine corks to create circles, plastic packaging might have interesting textures on it. We've covered making texture plates with drinking straws and crinkled up fabric and corrugated card and kitchen foil, buttons and things like that. There's so many items that you can put your hands on quite easily, and they will help create interesting textures for various layers on your gel printing plate. Don't think that you've got to sort of rush out and buy any specialist equipment, because if you just sort of look at what you've got in the household with a different eye, you'll be surprised what you can find. Go out into the garden, look for interesting leaves and grasses. Maybe there's some feathers or something lying around. They can all be used to create really exciting and beautiful prints. In this category, I have one don't. Maybe you want to create some sort of defined marks on your plate. And if that's the case, use something with a rounded tip. Maybe you've got one of these embossing ball tools. You could use that to draw lines on the surface of your gel plate, and it'll be perfectly safe because it's nice and smooth. If you haven't got something like that, what about the end of a handle of a paintbrush that's nicely rounded over? Don't use anything sharp. Don't take a sharp pointed object like this or a sharp pencil. If you scratch the surface and damage the surface of your plate, you can't repair that, unfortunately. You know, if you do happen to split or tear into that surface, that damage is permanent. So make sure anything that you use to create any lines or defined marks has a smooth, rounded tip to it. The one other no in this sort of category is don't use any heat on the plate. Maybe you're impatient for layers of paint to dry. Don't be tempted to get out a heat tool or something like that and blast it. You risk damaging your plate once again. They're not designed to withstand any heat. Have some patience. Let paint dry naturally if you're waiting for layers to dry. Number 4, allow yourself time to create lots of prints in one session. Don't just get everything out and think, I'm just going to make 1 print or 2 prints. You stand a high chance of not being satisfied with what you've created. I find it's much more enjoyable to set aside the time to create at least a dozen prints, if not more. You find by working even with a limited range of colours or a limited range of stencils or textures, lots of different combinations, and one of those is going to be your wow combination, and you're going to be really, really pleased. I mean, when I was printing with inks, I created a dozen or so sort of finished items. I've still got some prints left here, and as you can see here, using the same couple of colours of ink but in different combinations, the same stencil to create a positive and a negative, you sort of get this lovely variety. I've got sort of a session here where I was using different fabric textures and created lots of different prints with limited colours again. Pan pastels, they go on forever, so you know you end up with dozens and dozens of prints, but again there'll be certain ones that you love far more than others, so definitely take the time to create lots. The session where I was making Christmas cards, same couple of colours, same couple of masks, lots of different prints. We created some finished projects. I've still got prints left here to work with. Another day I was creating larger prints. And again, you know, we've got all these bits left over, which means there are prints that I don't like so much, but there are prints that I absolutely love. And by giving myself the time to create all this sort of variety of prints, you're going to be much more satisfied with the sort of the finished collection as a whole. So definitely give yourself plenty of time. If you're going to go to the effort of getting your work table set up, getting your products out, just enjoy using them for, you know, for more than 5 minutes. And the don't in this category is do not have rigid expectations of what you're going to end up with. By creating a big variety of prints, You're going to get ones that you don't like very much. You're going to get ones that you like a bit. You're going to get ones that you absolutely love. If you go into a session thinking, this is exactly what I want to make, and you've got a very fixed image in your mind, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. It's not an exact science, gel printing. You'll be very hard pushed to replicate a print exactly for a second time. That's the whole fun of it, really, is the fact that there is always this sort of unknown quantity to it. There's a surprise involved. So definitely don't be very rigid in expectations. Be open-minded and allow yourself that time to experiment and play. And finally, number 5, have fun. You should be enjoying the process of printing far more really than the finished products that you come out with at the end. And I've always said this in videos that I've done to students at live workshops, that really the most important thing is enjoying being creative. So regardless of what you end up with at the end of that session, I want to know really that you've enjoyed that creative journey by shutting out the outside world for an hour or so, if you're able to devote that much time, and just playing. Enjoy getting paint and ink on your hands, making a mess, being surprised, experimenting, trying things that may work or may not work, but just enjoying letting that part of your brain sort of become in tune with the paints and the products that you're using, and have fun. So whether you are creating things like painterly prints with acrylic paint, this little journal where, we created our own stencils and just had fun experimenting with different colours and textures, making pop art prints with magazines, creating Christmas cards and envelopes, collage backgrounds, little note cards, abstract watercolour backgrounds. Every one of these different techniques I have enjoyed learning and playing and experimenting and finding those 1 or 2 really excellent prints out of that whole batch of a dozen that I've done, and then going on to work with them and to create something else, a finished item with them. And my final don't be discouraged if you have a disastrous session. We all have prints that we hate. We all have days where nothing seems to go right when we're in the craft room. And it really doesn't matter. Worst thing that happened, throw it away, start again, paint over it and start again. Take that big print that you look at and you think it's awful, and then go, well, do you know what? I like that little tiny bit there. Well, cut that little bit out, use that, discard the rest. At the end of the day, you've wasted nothing. You've used some paint, you've used some paper, you've used your time. But if you've enjoyed the process, you haven't wasted your time. And the bit of paper and the bit of paint, the cost of that is negligible. The enjoyment that you've got from the session outweighs all of that. So definitely don't be discouraged if things don't go to plan, because we all have days like that. Every session that I create a batch of prints, there will be a couple in there that I don't like. But if you've sort of followed my tips today and created a whole bunch of prints rather than 1 or 2, there's going to be some that you do like. If you've enjoyed that process, you haven't wasted your time. If you've tried using different media and different items from around the house to create texture, you've not really wasted any money that day, because those are items that you've already got. So I think my final thing to say to you is, keep having fun, keep experimenting, keep being positive about what you're doing and enjoy it. Do it with passion. Have great fun. Don't let other people criticize you. Don't let people say, I don't know why you're doing it. What are you going to do with that now that you've done it? It doesn't matter what you do with it. You've had the fun, the enjoyment by devoting that time to a hobby that you enjoy. And that's the most important thing. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it useful. Please leave me a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.